Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to create a demonstration project in Godot 4, beta 1 at the current time here, and talk to a NoSQL database in order to store things like character data for an RPG or whatever your imagination wishes. We're going to use LiteDB, this right here. Reason we're going to use this is because it's a single file database, so it's easily portable. You don't have to set up a server, but it's a step above, in my opinion anyway, CastleDB. I saw another very good video on setting that up in Godot, and my one issue with that is it's very handy, but it's not very practical because you can just edit the file. You can open the file on a text editor, and then whoever's playing your game has access to all the data. So and if there's a way, someone give a shout out and let me know. I don't know if there's a way to encrypt that simply or, without doing some, annoying extra stuff. So either way, this is what we're going to go with. And what we have here is this is just a character so that, just a basic object so we have something to store and something to update and show that stuff is working. So what we're going to do first here is create the statistics that we want to store in the first place. So I've created an object, just as node 3D is all it is, just an object to hold the script that we want for those player stats. We're going to add a new script. Let's just call it character base. Now, a lot of people might say use an entity base and then inherit a character or enemy afterwards. That's good advice. It's just that in this case, I'm just going to demonstrate the functionality of the database primarily. And why is this giving me a problem down here? That's why, because I want that to be the file name, not what it inherits from. Okay, so we'll create that script. Don't need any of this, because what we're going to do is we're going to just anything you want to store, any stat, we're just gonna put in this base class, and I'll show how that works out. So we want to export these, and that at symbol export, all that's going to do is tell Godot make that visible in the inspector there. So I think just for an example, let's use Final Fantasy VI. We're not going to try and implement the battle system, at least not yet. We'll just use that as an example of some stats that we, something to use just for demonstration purposes. So for each one of these, we're going to create a variable. So that's a lot of fun right there. I actually think this is a little different from the Super Nintendo. Huh. So no matter. Anyway, so this just gives us something to work with. We'll save that. So now we've got these traits and this script. So sorry, where we go. So here, there we go. Didn't want to load on me. So if you were to, you put in values like here, yeah, whatever you want in here is going to be what the player is going to start with. Okay, so in addition to any actual statistics, we would need variables to store, the actual HP. So HP, let's call it that. I believe also if we do a hint in Godot 4, this will actually make a difference in performance if we do a hint. I mean, I'm probably too lazy. I'll go and fix that later. But now that I thought of it, let's do that. And we need an HP max. Let's call that 6,000, whatever. So, and this is going to play with my player script. And what we're doing here is we're just going to set this text, which, just is default in its current configuration here. Just HP something something, just to make sure I'm showing it. Oh, and also billboard is on. and which keeps this facing the camera, whichever way you rotate, like so. So what this script is going to do, this player script, I've already attached it to that player right here. And what that's going to do is just going to get the stats object. This is the node, the stats node, which has this base script that we just created on it. And it's going to, so get node with a period here means just get the current node. So it would be this the player node in this case. And then within that, we're going to get node and percentage stats. The percentage is another Godot 4 feature, if you're not familiar yet, where if you right click and go down here and check access seen as unique name, you can then access by the name instead of having to get the full path in there, which can be kind of annoying. So that's what I'm doing here, percentage stats and percent HP label, same principle. And when you do that, obviously just make sure you have good naming conventions and you don't repeat the names in other nodes because that can get messy. So now that we've got the label as a variable here, which I'm storing it right here, we're going to this set text, the stats object, which is again the object that has this script. We're going to access the HP and HP max here. So, and this str is just like Python string. It converts whatever is in here to a string. Might be already, I don't know. And then just a slash, and then the HP max also from here. So when we hit play on this, what it's going to do is it's going to just update that to the actual HP. And there we go. So that's just to have something to store in the first place. So now we need to get into the LiteDB aspect of this. So this site, litedb.org, that's where we get it. If you go to install package, a couple ways you can do this. So the main thing here is I think you could use it as a DLL if you wanted to, but I don't know, I ran into errors with that. You need to have your dependencies in line if you do that too. So the easiest way is just to go to the package reference here and copy this line here, which is a little, I think XML format. Okay. Yeah, another thing I forgot to mention is we are going to use C#. So if you're doing this, make sure you have the Mono or .NET 6, whatever it is now, build of Godot, because that's how we're going to access this. Like this isn't going to be directly accessible from GDScript, or we're going to use some .NET here. So what you need to actually, I apologize for not mentioning this. So what we need to do is create a C# script first, because we need a C# project to exist first. And you'll see why momentarily. So this is the main scene. Again, this is just a default setup. So we're going to add a C# script, and I made this database folder because the files that you're going to create in here are probably going to be related and talk to each other. It's annoying to have them mixed in with other ones. So we're going to go here, new script, and so we want C# this time. And then we're going to name it something. Database handler. Let's go with that. And create. There we are. Okay, so now you see this file, the CS project. So what we need here is that this XML tag. I don't know why there isn't a more straightforward way to add references in, but hopefully there will be in time. But this is the easy way I've found so far. So what you want in here is an item group, if I recall correctly. And then within this, you put in any package reference you have, and I'll save that. And yeah, this is whenever this comes up, this is going to resolve any dependencies that this package has, I think, whether it has or not. So you want to go ahead and hit restore. And that's what that's doing, is it's handling dependencies. And I think it needed to do that for the Godot API itself up here. That's why it popped up earlier. But anyway, so now we have so the reason for doing that is, since now that we've added this in here and resolved the dependencies, now we can use the LiteDB API. So we'll just go up here. If you'll see that this is right here, autocomplete shows it showing up. So what we're going to want to do, and we're not really going to want to process in this case, is it's just handling. We're going to have a database. So the way we do that is I want this to be accessible from other scripts, so I'm going to make it public. Lite database is the type. This is in their documentation and such, but save us some time. I'm going to call it game database. And then we need a table. If you're familiar with databases, you'll think in tables. If you're familiar with NoSQL databases, you'll think in collections, and that's essentially the analogy. So what we keep here, I collection, is this is going to be the table or collection that stores this data. So collection, and then the type here, this is a generic type. We're going to put in the type, which is going to be a class, actually, another C# class. Okay, so before we actually create this, what we're going to need to put in here is a C# class. So what we're going to do, it's going to seem a little redundant, but hopefully that'll be kind of clear shortly. We're going to recreate this as a C# class instead of this Godot class. Now the reason for that is, so this class here is what the editor can look at. That's what Godot is going to see. And when we have data on the actual game object, it's going to be looking at the Godot script here. I'm pretty sure you could probably do it as one, but C# is a little different, and I want to be able to have this be as flexible as possible, or people can adapt it whichever way they want to. But anyway, so we're going to create a character C# script, and you'll see why this might get a little ugly to do in one script, maybe, or maybe I'm dumb, but either is acceptable. So in scripts in the database, we're going to create a new script, C#. Let's just call this one character. And now we have it, right? Where is it? Character. So now we do not want to inherit this one from Node, because this is going to be a C# object where I don't need partial class either. Godot needs partial class because if you're going from them, because it's only showing you part of it, is my understanding anyway. So let's get rid of this stuff. And we don't need these either, at least not right now. So all this is going to be is a duplication of these traits, except in C#. And the reason for that, again, is that's going to be the type we put in this C# class here, or the class that we put in here rather. It's going to be a little bit different format. Before we put those traits in, this part is going to be a key part here. So before we get to those traits, we need LiteDB.objectID. And then all this is going to be, I'm just going to make it _ID, and then typical property notation, which is just means it has a getter and a setter. The reason we need to put this in here, I found out the hard way. So if I just create if we just do prop and then tab, we'll get short code snippets for doing a C# property. So if I just go in here and go, strength, etc., do all the rest of those classes, properties, then that's fine, and then it'll work. You'll put in all the traits you need when you spin this up. But when you try to go to update that collection later, you're going to use an altered instance of this class. You're going to create a character object from this class, or retrieve it, as it were, and then you're going to make modifications to it, and then you're going to use that modified object to update the database. You're just going to set, that's how LiteDB works. You're going to set it to that. But if you don't have this, what's going to happen is it's not going to work, because it only lets you do that update by the ID. That will get set automatically if you create a character object and put it into a LiteDB collection. So now we're going to go all the rest of these. So I'm just going to do this in a really messy way so I don't have to go back and forth. Okay, get rid of this, save it. So now we have a C# class that stores the same thing as the Godot class. So going back to the database handler, so now what we're going to do, this is going to be our collection or table of character objects. Characters, or call it character collection just to be clear. Why are you giving me a red squiggly? Yeah, so I'm just defining it here. Wow, said the programmer. Okay. So we have a database, well, a place to hold the database rather, and then we have a table or collection, whichever you want to call it. So when we initialize this script, we're going to either create or read the database. So in order to do that, let's get the current directory that we're in. This is just going to end up being the path to the database file. So we're going to go current directory. No, we need system.io. So directory. The reason I'm going to put the whole thing there is I think Godot also has a directory class or something of that sort. So just want to be sure. So we're going to get the current directory, add the path as well. This way we can change it if we want to. I'm going to use path combine because that will make it simpler, so we don't have to worry if we got the backslashes right. The @ symbol in C# is a way to treat it as a raw string so that you don't have to escape backslashes and whatnot. So let's go scripts. Where am I? Database. And yeah, let's just put come on with the quotes, the name of the database file we want. Okay, so what that's going to do is just establish the path to the database. And if the LiteDB method will either create this if it doesn't exist, or it'll just read it, and that it'll be your variable there. I'm gonna log this just for good tradecraft. GDprint is just getting the C# version of print. Just gonna call this just so I know that method's got that far in the code. So game database, which is again this variable, we're gonna set that here. Okay, actually what I'm gonna do is I should do the connection string first. So connection string $sign in C# will let us put variables in between brackets like that. So that's why I'm using that. Okay, so the file name is going to equal that database path. Be more accurate, I should call it database path. Then we just need the other arguments like most connection strings. Now here's where I think it's important. So by if we don't set a password here, you'll be able, you can just get into it without, any trouble for obvious reasons. So setting a password will make it so that this database is, cannot be opened just in in any editor. So that way your game at least like has one rudimentary level of protection. And the only other one that's relevant really here is connection type. Typically by default it's direct, which I think just means you can only do one transaction at a time or something of that nature. I'm just going to put it to shared because potentially you could have things happening concurrently if your game got complicated. So I'm just gonna leave it that. So the actual database, we're gonna say game database, which again is this. We're gonna set that equal to light database with that connection string. We do need that. Okay, we need to actually create the object to return. That's why that was giving me a problem there. So if I'll save that. So if I run this, what should happen is the game will just get the directory. It will see that this doesn't exist and it'll create the database. So I'll have a database. One other thing we need to do before that is to make sure that this script auto loads when you start the game. So it's because we're not attaching this to a node. So in order to make a load, we need to go to project settings, auto load, and anything of that nature that you want to auto load is going to have to go in this. So, whoops, that's not where I wanted to go. Scripts, not scenes. And then database handlers. So we're going to add that. So now we've got that. And it's complaining down here that it doesn't inherit from node, but that's okay because like I said, this is a actually it does inherit from node. I don't know. Ignore that, Mr. Worf. All right. So we're going to start this game just to see if that much works. Builds the .NET project now that we have a .NET project. No problems here so far. But now a database should exist. And let's confirm that. There it is. So yeah, now we have this file here. So another thing we want to keep in mind here is, how do you look at this data? So what we're going to do, there's this is the creator chap of LiteDB. So in his repo, we also has LiteDB Studio, which is a tool that is used to, just view the data essentially. Have that open. So I'm going to do this, connect. Going to point it to our database right here. And then I'm just going to be like XYZ123. I just created a dumb password just to demonstrate the functionality. And now we have, okay. So it's all this here are a bunch of system tables. One thing I want to mention off the bat that I found out is if you create a collection or table, it's not going to show up here unless you actually add at least one item to it, or again, row if we're thinking in those terms. So I'm gonna just disconnect. That'll be fine. So the next thing, and I should break these out into separate methods just to, for good practice. Like I can just demonstrate the functionality by throwing everything in here, but it's going to get too messy. So let's say add character. I'm going to put the character name in here. And you know what? That's something else we need, don't we? So don't necessarily need it in the Godot script because you could use the node name. But let's do it anyway. So, I'm in the C# script. C# script string name. So we're going to add name in there. That's where it's at least important, is because we're going to need to, use this as an identifier. Like it will automatically use this ID anyway, but this we want an index on this so we can pull it by the name because that's what we want to be able to look it up by. So in order to add a new character, we need character. so new character, and again, that's a new one of these, an object of this type that we created. So new character, and then you can open our curly brackets here, and this will just create all the properties of the object. So we got strength, anything. Let's do this. Okay, so what this so this is our character object that we're going to store in the database. And while we're on the subject, like you would, if you're getting serious with this, you would obviously, anything you wanted to store about the character, you might want to put in here, like is the character grounded and whatnot. But again, this is just for demonstration purposes. So that and a semicolon would help. So now we have a character object with these properties. So now we need to add it to that collection. But we can't do that without a collection, can we? So let's do that next. This I don't think needs to be put in a separate method, but let's do that. Collection. So this is going to be this object here. We need to give it a value, which is going to be the collection or table. Collection. So we need the database object that we just created here. That's what we're going to act on. And then we have Git Collection. And you'll see here in the notes, if a collection does not exist, create a new one. So it will take care of that for us. And here we're going to put the type of collection it is, again based on this C# object. And so this is what it's going to store. And then in parentheses, all you really need to do is put what the actual table name or collection name is going to be in the database. So the difference there is, like, this is the type, this is the C# object where we're storing this type of object. We're naming the table in the database characters. So that's the distinction there. This is a type, this is just the name that we're giving it in the database. So that should create the collection. But again, we probably will not see it, if I were to connect to it here without adding a character in there. So this is going to give us a dummy one. The thing is, like, if you make this unique, it will give you an error if you try to insert a character that's already there. And we can do like a try catch, so like catch the error when that happens. But I would like to put a duplicate check in there. That's a little cleaner because we don't want it to actually catch an error if we don't have to do that. Let's do character result, character collection. And there are a couple ways to query in LiteDB. It's in their documentation. In this case, I'm going to do find one because even though there should never be more than one, but if there are any, then I know it's already there. And let's actually make the player's name. I don't know why I did this. So let's do character name here. That's what we should do. And then down here, this uses lambdas, so those are always confusing if you're not familiar with them. So this is what it looks like. X could be anything. You can put, this could be your variable, but essentially here's an object, and then this is the type of object that's in this collection. So that's why that works. Like, it'll be the same type, I should say. That's clearer. So whatever it finds will be an object like this. And if that object's name is the same as the character name, then we know that it's already in that table. So let's go. So if the exclamation means not, inverts basically. So if it's not null, here's what we're going to put here. Again, I know that's a little bit confusing to look at for some folks. So this is basically saying if the character is null, and negate that. So if the character is not null, we're going to make a note in the log. So this character, so say it's already in database, boarding add character, blah, 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 and then return, which will just return will just break you out of the add character method. Now, if that does not happen, we're going to continue execution down here and say we're going to insert that character. Insert character. And again, not character name. This is the character object that we created, which is going to have all the properties that are defined in that collection. Because the collection, again, was created here, a collection of type character. That's defining, so that makes it so like this is defining your columns or your fields of the table. So after that, so what we're gonna, so if we go this far and we stop, we have not actually ensured that this character name field is unique, and there's no index on it. So in databases, basically, if there is not an index on a field, then it has to scan the entire table if you need to look something up from it. What that's kind of equivalent to is think of, a reference book, a book of something you're studying, and there's a dictionary, an index in the back where you can look up specific topics and what pages those are on. So it's kind of like that in the computer world where if you don't have that index, then the computer has to read the whole book. But if you do have the index, it can find it very quickly. So that's when it comes to databases, that's a big performance thing. So you definitely want an index on what you're going to be searching by. So this is where we do this. Collection, ensure index. And again, this is just LiteDB's way of doing it. So name is the column or whatever that we're going after. And then this next, like, I don't quite understand this second argument, but through experimentation, if you put just true or false, that goes to this unique field. And so what that's doing is saying that that's unique. And let's just log it. Just for good tradecraft. Okay, so that's the add character method now. Let's get this out of the way. I do like collapsing methods when things get complicated. So right here. So this just, again, we got the path, we got the database created, we created a password, we created a table in the database. So now we're going to call that add character method here and just name the character. So player one. So, and then what that will do is add that player to the collection or table with these specifications. So let's give that a run. Okay, so nothing broke that I know of. So here we go. So initializing database, player one added to the database. Now you'll notice this has not changed these values. Now that's because we haven't tried to connect it to the Godot objects yet. We're just trying to create the database end of things first. So what we can do to check this now is go back to LiteDB Studio. Let's connect to that same, leave it as shared. So we're going to connect to this database. And now we've got this characters table. So I don't know if this is like similar to SQL, but I don't know. It's like, but it'll at least let me look at it without any fuss. So there we go. You just double click that and run it. And here are our traits. So, and this is that, where is it? This ID that we were talking about. Even if you didn't put that in there, it would still work. But now if I query, now if I do, my goodness, now if I do this, if I find, um, and I'll get an object back. I will get a character object back when I do this. And since we have this as one of the properties now, it will fire back and give you this. And you need this if you want to update this data in code. Now that's why we need that in that class. Now again, so this will give you the convenience of if you wanted to like look at your game data while you're developing it, and you can add a field in here by adding it to the class, and it won't mess up the other stuff. And then if you wanted to go in here and go um, 85, whatever, and then you can go to commit up here. I think this is just returning, I don't know whether there was an error or not. But now you see that's updated. So we can use LiteDB Studio to go through the data and update it as we like. So that's awesome. So, but yeah, we'll continue on and talk about actually talking to the database and creating a layer for the Godot object.